Welcome to Vibrant Church. My name is Brandon. I'm the lead pastor here. Me and my wife, John, and we planted Vibrant Church 11 weeks ago. So we are brand new to Broward County. We actually moved here in November of last year. And when we moved here to start Vibrant Church, we didn't actually know anybody within about a 25-minute drive of the school that we're meeting at right now. Which is what church studies show you is like those are the people most likely to come. My mom lives in Pompano, so my only connection down here was my mom, and she's a little bit out of that driving range. But here's what I can tell you. I believe God's doing something special and vibrant. And we started this church for people that weren't connected in church. We started this church for people that didn't feel like they always fit in church, believing that there's something better. I grew up in a church where I didn't like church at all. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah, right? And I wanted to start a church that the people like me that didn't always like or appreciate church would actually want to come back to. So we started Vibrant Church 11 weeks ago, and it's been an unbelievable journey. And I just wanted to highlight one thing. You're an incredibly generous people. And the reason I say that is when we first met with the middle school principal about possibly using this facility, she shared with us about how they have students in the school that their parents either don't care or just won't wash their clothes. So they come to school knowing that they smell bad, and because they know that they smell bad, they don't engage in the classroom because they're embarrassed. And she's like, I can get a lot of money from somebody so we can have a new computer system, but what I don't have is a way to wash these kids' clothes. And because of your generosity, I actually got to, after that conversation, go to the Home Depot and buy a brand new washer and dryer for the school. So here's why I say that. We get to do this. And the church that was in our hearts, me and my wife Jonna's hearts before we began, is we wanted to be a blessing to the city. We were asked this question in 10 years if Vibrant Church, which hasn't started yet, if it were to not be here, would the city miss you? Because the city's not going to miss you because you had services. The city's going to miss you because you invested. It was your city. You had ownership in it. And I just want to make a commitment. In 10 years, I'm still going to be here leading Vibrant Church. And we're going to answer that question really well as a church. The city's going to miss Vibrant if it wasn't here, and we're still going to be here. So don't worry. It has nothing to do with my message today. We are in a series. If you're not from a church environment, a series is just a group of teachings that kind of work together called Savage Jesus. And I've had a lot of questions online of wait, what? Savage Jesus? That doesn't sound right. I did it for two reasons. One, I think we sometimes create an image of Jesus that didn't actually exist. I think culture and religion taught us that Jesus was something different than he actually was. And I also really wanted to offend religious people who would be really offended by the fact that I would call Jesus savage. And I'm really okay with both of those. Jesus was really good at offending religious people. In fact, the story that we're going to look at today was one of those times. We're going through the book of Mark, which is one of the four accounts of Jesus' life called the Gospels. And Mark was the earliest gospel. Mark, when he wrote the book, it was most likely Peter, who was Jesus' arguably closest disciple, telling the story of what happened in Jesus' life. And Mark writes a language kind of like he writes in a paintbrush. He didn't talk a lot about the teachings of Jesus. He talked a lot about the actions of Jesus, because he was one of those that just was persuaded that our actions speak louder than our words. And Mark and Peter got together and decided, hey, the best representation of Jesus is to talk about what actually happened in his life, not just the things that he said. So in Mark chapter 3, starting in verse 1, it says, another time Jesus went to the synagogue, aka church, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they were watching him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. So you have these religious leaders who are looking to literally kill Jesus. They want Jesus gone. He confronts and uproots all of their religious systems, and they don't like him and they want him to go away. So they're following him around, trying to find a reason to get him in jail or to kill him. And they're looking for him on the Sabbath, or in the Jewish system, Shabbat, which was a day that was kept holy. And if you worked on Sabbath, it was against the law. And so some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he'd heal on the Sabbath. And Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." I hope he was not an introvert, because this would have been like his worst nightmare. And then Jesus asked them, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? And they remained silent. He looked at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched out his hand. He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees, which were the religious teachers, went out and began to plot with the Herodians, which were a political group of people that had a lot of influence, how they might kill Jesus. Why don't you look at the person next to you and say, "This isn't working"? Now look at the person you chose not to say it to and look at them and say, "This isn't working." Wow, we need to work on this engagement level here. I will preach better if you talk back with me. So, this isn't working. Have you ever found your life in a situation where you looked at your circumstances and you're like, "This isn't working"? Have you ever been in a relationship where you looked at the person across from the table and you're like, "This isn't working"? That sounded a little fresh. Sorry. This isn't working. I was at the gym a couple weeks ago, and I was having a blast, by the way. I actually like working out because I'm a people watcher, so I'll listen to a book and I'll people watch. If you ever seen me, that's what I'm doing. I'm watching people. I'm looking for sermon material. So if you work out at Planet Fitness, because it's a church planner budget gym, that's where I like to go. So I'm working out there, and I noticed some different kinds of people in the gym. And on this day, when I was looking, because I was getting ready to preach this message, there was this lady walking on the treadmill about this fast. And to make it worse, she's eating a bag of chips. And I'm watching her, and I'm like, "Girl, this isn't working. You keep doing this, and you're not going to like the results that you're getting." There's another guy. This one was really funny. You ever see those guys that like to grunt, but their grunting is bigger than the weight that's in their arms? He didn't have that big of a bicep, and he didn't have that big of a weight, but he's like, "Yeah!" That loud. Everyone in the gym's kind of looking at him like, "You all right? You going to be okay?" This isn't working. And then there's my favorite one. There's Mr. Flex. Anyone that goes to a gym, you know who he is. He's Mr. Flex. If you don't know who he is, he's probably you. Mr. Flex is going around flexing. There's this guy. He's always in the gym for whatever reason at the same time that I'm there. And he's flexing. He goes in front of all the ladies on the treadmill or on the elliptical, and he's just doing this in front of him. And they're all annoyed by it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, get over yourself." And I'm watching the situation. I'm like, "Bro, this isn't working. Your game needs a new game. You think you're playing football. They're not playing football. They don't even like football. They're not even interested in the game that you have to offer right now." And as I'm watching these situations, I realize that there's something more going to the story than just the situation. It wasn't a failed situation. It was actually a failed system. It's one thing to know why something, or that something isn't working. It's another to know why. It's one thing to look in the mirror and be like, "Man, I really should get on a health diet." It's another thing to look in the mirror and know how you got there. Why? It's a system. There's a system that created the situation. And I think what happens oftentimes, especially in our American culture, is we want the microwave version. So we just want the situation to go away, and we think if the situation goes away, we'll be fine. And then we pay for the situation to go away, and then the situation becomes 7 other smaller situations that were just like the first one. Because what we didn't do was fix the system. And Jesus is looking into a culture and a religious system, and he's like, "This isn't working. This is incredibly broken." Jesus walks in on the scene, and there's a man, and if you've been around church circles, you'd think if Jesus is this big shot teacher, he'd be walking in with some boys driving some Mercedes, some boys that have some deep pockets. No, it says he walked into the church service with a man that had a deformed hand. Well, in the culture, the Jewish system had been set up in a way that made it so because he had a deformed hand, they believed his hand was deformed because of sin, so he wasn't allowed inside of worship. And Jesus is like, oh, you're coming in with me, boy. And he makes this man's situation an object lesson. Stand up in front of everybody. What? You didn't say that when we were going in? What are you talking about? Jesus wanted to take a broken situation and use it to fix a broken system. Because the system that made it so he didn't fit in worship and wouldn't belong in church. And some of you today, that's honestly how you feel. Though your deformity might not be a hand, it might be something else in your life. Here's what we do in church world. For some of you that have been in church, here's what we like to do. We like to come in with our church hand. We put on that church face and we be like, I'll go up to you and be like, hey, how can I pray for you this week? Oh, no, Pastor, I'm the prayer warrior. I'll pray for you, Pastor. What's going on in your life? I'll pray for you. And I'm like, hey, well, what about that other hand behind your back? Well, let's talk about, oh, no, Pastor, it's all good. Like, we put on our church face. So religious people want to hide the deformed hand, but people that haven't grown up in church think the deformed hand or the broken part of your life disqualifies you from coming to church at all. And Jesus is like, y'all are both wrong. You both twisted it. You both thought the situation was the issue. It's actually a system problem. And today I want to talk about 5 different things that Jesus came to fix. The text that we just read appears to be about the man's hand, but it was actually about the condition of the people's hearts. You see, he found there was lots of people that had issues in their life and situations that were challenging. Jesus picked the one guy that represented what was an internal struggle inside of the religious leaders of the day, and he's like, you have a deformed heart. You have a heart issue, kind of like the man has a hand issue. His is a little bit more visible than yours. So the first thing that Jesus has to address to fix the system is pessimism. Pessimism is considering your situation without considering your source. Some of you are like, what did you just say? If you've ever been in a situation of life where you looked at the situation and you felt helpless, or you felt defeated, or you felt lacking because you compared your situation to you have a broken system. Jesus was trying to highlight, hey, but when you compare the system, the situation, to God, all of a sudden the situation doesn't seem so big. That's why prayer is such a big deal. Like, so many times I've gone to God in prayer, God, I think I'm going to die. I think this is going to fall apart. I think this is really broken. And then I go to prayer, and I look at how big God is, and I remember the things that he's spoken, and I walk out of that same prayer situation. The circumstances hasn't changed, but my posture towards it has completely changed. Why? When I compared the situation to me, there was an issue. In fact, here's one of the funny things that people say all the time. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Well, you followed Jesus for 3 minutes, because what I have learned is Jesus always gives you more than you can handle, because he doesn't want you to live a life that's as small as you are. He wants you to live a life bigger than you. He wants a vision in front of you that's greater than anything you can do on your own. He's actually going to allow things into your life that are incredibly broken situations that he wants to expose so he can fix a system. So I wonder how many times our attitude has affected the results that we get. So here's how I see it sometimes. Have you ever met the guy that's like, nobody likes me, nobody talks to me, nobody follows me, nobody friends me? And they walk into a room and that vibe's just coming off of them. Nobody likes me. And they just kind of like, they've already predetermined the outcome of the situation, that no one's going to like them, and then they're surprised that no one likes them. And the reason that no one wants to engage with them is their attitude is, nobody likes me, nobody talks to me, everybody's against me. You created the situation because of your self-talk. In fact, in Proverbs it says, which is another book of the Bible, in the Old Testament, Proverbs it says, as a man thinketh, so he is. As a man thinks about himself, oftentimes that's the situation that he finds himself in. I helped coach 12-year-old football, and here's what I found. The boys that go on the field confident that they're going to pull a flag, you know what happens? They pull a flag. The guys are like, I don't know if I'll get it. Maybe I'll get one flag pulled today. You know what happens over and over again? They miss. Why? They've already predetermined in their head because of their pessimism the situation. And I wonder how many times we've come to a conclusion about our situation before we've actually even examined the evidence. Pessimism. Nobody likes me. No one appreciates me. And Jesus comes into the situation and says some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. How many of you know you'll find what you're looking for? Right? Like, if you go into a group of people and there's someone in the group that's offended you before and you think they might offend you again and you're looking for the offense, you're probably going to find it. If you're looking for a reason to be bitter at life and think that life's given you a bad hand, you know what you're going to probably find? A bad hand. I wonder how many times we have already predetermined what we're looking for, and then we got exactly what we thought we'd find. In fact, some of you today came as a guest to Vibrant, and you're looking for a reason not to come back. Let me let you know a little secret. You won't have a hard time finding it. Why? Because though I might be the pastor of Vibrant Church, I'm just a man. I don't have it all together. I don't have it all figured out. I don't have all the answers. In fact, I found the more that people are in charge of things, they tend to not always go perfect. So we want to be one of those churches where it's just like, hey, no perfect people allowed. Some of you are like, what are you talking about? All right, let's keep going. Second thing Jesus came to come against, the second system, was prejudice. Now, in the story, it says nothing about a skin color or a gender equality, but there's certainly a prejudice in the story. The prejudice is actually against Jesus. They've already predetermined an outcome. In fact, the word prejudice, the definition's in the name, prejudge. And here's what I found in life. When you posture yourself in the judge's seat, you never get to witness something great. When you've already predetermined the outcome before you got in the situation to begin with, your prejudice created the viewpoint of the understanding of the outcome. In fact, in the legal term, they call it confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when you're looking for something specific, you're going to typically find what you think you're going to find. So in the religious system, they were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. And it wasn't very hard to follow Jesus around to realize he's actually trying to turn the religious system upside down, and they're trying to kill him because he's turning the religious system upside down. And I think the key for us is this. What if our job is to actually get out of the judge's seat? Because you've already determined who God can bless. You've already determined who's in and who's out. Who's welcome, who's not. Who's acceptable, who's not. You know, I've been a youth pastor for about 14 years. And everyone knows in middle school there's a lot of judgment that takes place. There's a lot of prejudice. You don't look like me, you don't talk like me, you don't act like me. You're not good at what I'm good at, therefore you're on a different side of the tracks as me. And then we get into adult world thinking that we've graduated from the judgment seat mentality, that we have already predetermined who we can and cannot associate with and who God's going to bless and who's God's going to be for. And I wonder if we get out of the judgment seat and we get in a witness mentality, that we'll actually start finding what we're looking for. Let me explain it like this. In the morning when I pray, I'll oftentimes ask God, would you give me 3 people today to encourage? Would you give me 3 people that you would open up my eyes to see the broken and hurting people in my life, that I might bring hope and light into their situation? And then after I pray that prayer, I go about my day. You know what happens? I'm looking for it. And you know what usually happens? I usually find at least 3 people to bring hope and encouragement for. But if I sit in a judgment seat, I might look into their situation and be like, bro, what's wrong with you? Stop. When I'm in a witness mentality, I see it from a different lens. A witness mentality is, oh, God, how can you use my story the broken places in my life that you've healed, to bring encouragement to this guy. But the days that I forget to pray that prayer, God, would you bring 3 people in my life? You know what happens? Nothing. Nothing. Not because God didn't put those 3 people in my life that day, but because my eyes weren't open, they weren't looking for it, because I had started my day with the simple prejudice of like, I've got a lot to do today. I'm not sure that I can pray that prayer because usually that prayer takes about 30 minutes to an hour per person. God, I just got to go to the grocery store and get something. My wife is going to kill me if I do another hour long to go get butter. But a witness mentality. I'm looking for it. I'm hoping for it. I wonder how many of you, in the midst of the situation that seems overwhelming, if you were to start thinking that, well, what if God's plan is actually to bless me? What if God actually does take all things and use it for my good? What if God can even take the things in my story that I wish weren't there and actually use them as the redemption part of my story, that the chapter that I wish wasn't there became the highlight moment of my story because it's the moment where God showed up. Witness. So I wonder today if, though your prejudice might not be according to skin color or socioeconomics, it might just be into your situation where you've predetermined an outcome. So the prejudice in this story with the religious people, according to Jesus, it was the Sabbath. It was a holy day. God had created the entire earth and everything in it in 6 days. And on the 7th day, he rested, setting a pattern among God's people of, hey, when you work for 6 days and rest for 1 day, because my blessing is on you as a people group, you will actually flourish more than all of the surrounding nations. And the surrounding nations will look upon the increase that you have because your harvests are greater, your fertility is greater because you did it my way. And they'll look up on this and realize that I really am God. So God was setting in motion a plan for man. The plan was work, 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 work. And all of you that love Rihanna, I'm really sorry. Some of you that don't know what that is, don't go look it up. Or if you're a millennial, you like to twist it. You're like rest, 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 work. Sorry, I'm a millennial. I got room to speak about it. You twist it. So the third thing that Jesus came to confront was perversion. Perversion is this. It's anytime a gift is used against its intention. So Sabbath was one commandment. Hey, honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy. What that meant was, hey, on 1 day a week, just don't labor. It doesn't mean go watch TV and watch Netflix all day. It just means go do the things that fill your tank and don't deplete you like work does. But because religion is what religion is, they took one command of God and turned 600 rules in its place. In fact, according to the religious standard of the day, you could go 1,999 paces, but if you went 2,000, it's work. So basically, that's a mile, 2,000 paces. You just can't walk a mile. If it's more than a mile, it's work. So people will actually strategically position their homes less than a mile from the synagogue because the religious system is, if you go that last 2,000 step, oh, now it's work and now you've sinned and now God's against you. Here's another one. If you have something dislocated, like if you would dislocate your shoulder on the Sabbath, it's considered work to pop it back into place. But if you're going to die, it's okay for them to help you. Thank you, religious leaders, for making if I'm going to die on the Sabbath, someone can step in and work. So Jesus is confronting a system that's broken, a perversion. In fact, let me say it like this. Some of you aren't tracking with me. The story before this one in Mark chapter 2 is Jesus is on his way to church. And on his way to church, the Pharisees are following him. And his disciples are hungry, so they get a snack. They go to the grain that's right alongside of the road, and they go like this, and they pull the grain off, and they eat it. But the Pharisees are like, oh, there it is. You worked on the Sabbath. You're working. He's like, we're not harvesting a field. We're getting a snack. Stop. And then Jesus makes this statement, which is key to the story. It says, then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, not people meet the requirements of the Sabbath. He says, religion, you keep screwing it up. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Some of you are like, yeah, this one's not about me. Actually, I wonder sometimes it is. Because for us, sometimes it may not be Sabbath, it's stuff. Stuff was made for man, not man for stuff. See, I don't think God really cares what kind of car you drive. I think he cares that the car has you. I don't think he cares how big your house is or how small your house is. I think he cares when you find your identity and your value inside of a house as if it's your source. Or thinking that if you earn a certain level of income, wear a certain kind of watch, have a certain kind of physique. The problem is perversion is when we twist it, we make it deformed. That the stuff was meant to serve us, and now we're serving the stuff. The thing that was meant to be a gift in your life now has brought you a prison in your life. Hashtag car payments. How many times have we missed the gift by serving it instead of allowing it to serve us? How many times have we ruined a friendship by being needy and overwhelming? Thinking that we deserve it. Stuff is great, but it's a terrible master. Money's amoral, doesn't have a morality. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil, of all kinds of evil, actually, according to the scripture. It's not the root of all evils. It's the root of all kinds of evil. It's saying money it doesn't matter unless it owns you. If you love money, there's something broken. The system that was there to serve you, now you're serving it. How many times have we missed a gift because of a perversion of twisting it into something it was never meant to be? And here's how religion does it. Here's how religion perverts it. Religion taught me, because I grew up in religion, not in relationship. There's a difference. So listen in really closely. Religion taught me if I do 10 different things, that then I could be made right with God and have a relationship with him. And when I live life as if the 10 things that I do and the 10 things that I don't do make me right with God, all of a sudden I start getting self-righteous because what made me right with God was my actions and behavior. That's the opposite of the message of Jesus. Jesus says, don't do 10 things so you're made right with God. Actually get the relationship with God right first and allow God to change you. So he is going to change you to do things and not do things, but you're not doing them from a position of trying to earn his favor or goodness or blessing on your life. You're doing them because he's so good. We love God because he first loved us. Not we love God because we first loved him. That's religion. And Jesus came to flip religion upside down and say, stop thinking you're better than other people because you do 10 things. Because here's what you do when you do that. You bring out your church hand. You bring out, hey, well, I do these things right. I don't understand why they struggle with that. And they could look into your life and like, I don't understand why you struggle with that. And Jesus is like, can we stop pretending that the reason we're made right with God is because we do these things? Instead of out of relationship with God, we allow God to change us, change the systems in our life, change the circumstances and the situations in our life, where he does the changing, he does the heavy lifting, and the people in my world are looking at my world changing, not because I did a bunch of things right, but because the power of God came into my life and empowered me to do something I couldn't do. You see, it was a heart issue. And Jesus used the situation of a man with a deformed hand to bring hope to everyone else that felt like religion disqualified them because of their deformity. So for all of you that came to church today thinking that because of your past and the things that you've done, you had to bring out your church hand and hide the other hand. If religion kept you out, come on in. If sin kept you out, come on in. You don't have to get it right first. You go to God and say, God, would you change me? God, would you change the system that's creating these situations in my life? God, would you do it? And God shows up, and he does what he couldn't do on his own. Which leads to the fourth one, procrastination. Procrastination will always keep you from experiencing God. If you've ever tried to lose weight, you get this one. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow. It says in Mark 3, verse 5, it says, Jesus looked around at the religious leaders in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts and said to the man, stretch out your hand. And get this, so watch this screen. What we want the rest of the verse to say is his hand was completely restored and he stretched it out. That's what we want it to say. We want God to go first. And God makes this man stand up in front of everybody and say, show him the hand that you hide all the time. Stretch it out. And if you're the man, you're like, I can't stretch it out. But it says, as the man did what he couldn't do, God showed up and did what only God could do. I wonder how many times we miss the blessing and the healing of God because we're wanting God to bring the healing before we walk in obedience. How many times are we like, God, I'll forgive them if you give me the grace to forgive them. And God's like, no, I want you to forgive them, and then I'll empower you to do what you couldn't do on your own. But God, I'm broke. God, could you give me the job first? No, I want you to be faithful and do the thing that I asked you to do financially. And once you've done what I've asked you to do, then I'll bring the increase. Because I want you to trust me. I want you to trust before what you can only experience after. You know where we get it wrong? It's often feeling based. Well, I don't feel like forgiving them. You know what? You'll never feel like forgiving them. Ever. Yep, that person that you're thinking about right now, you'll never feel like forgiving them. You know what forgiveness really is? Forgiveness is just, I'm not going to hold this against you anymore. It's not saying what you did was okay. It's not giving a permission slip. It's just saying, I'm not going to hold this against you anymore. Recently on the news, I don't ever like to watch the news because they get a lot of money off of creating fear. And I'm talking about all news stations, not just one of them. I'm watching the news, and they highlighted a story finally that was really good. And it was about a shooting that happened in Texas. And the family members who lost a loved one by a police shooting could have caused a situation that would have amplified what happened. And what happened was horrible. And it was dark, and it was evil, and it was wrong. And on the day when that person received judgment according to the court of law, the family members went to the person, the brother, and hugged the officer. I forgive you. I guarantee you they didn't feel like forgiveness. Forgiveness was just, I'm not going to hold this against you anymore. It's powerful. And what could have stirred hatred and bitterness and anger inside of this family actually came healing and redemption and hope, in my opinion, to a nation. As they saw God enabled someone to do what they couldn't do on their own. And here's what I'm learning. God doesn't bless our good hand. In the Jewish system, blessing was when the head of a home, which was a father, would lay his hands on his sons and he'd pray a blessing. It was the dominant hand, my right hand. And the scripture says it was his dominant hand, which removed his ability to walk in the authority and the identity at which he was created as the head of his home. And here's what I found. So often God takes the place that we thought disqualified us to become the very place that God uses the most. That as he healed his hand, came a generational blessing that now he got to go to church with his family. And now he got to bless his kids in a way that he couldn't before. And now that you've forgiven that person, you get to walk in a healing internally. that the situation that brought anger and discouragement and hatred has created a system in your life that's caused you to push other people away, that's caused you to not find favor at work because the anger and the bitterness has caused you to act a certain way. And God's saying, hey, when you let me heal the situation, I can actually bring hope and healing to the system that's creating the situation. I got to speed up. The last one is pride. The more you walk in church circles, or depending on the family that you grew up in, the more we find people doing like this. I don't have that hand. That's not that bad. I don't really need it. In fact, here's the other thing we'll do. But God, I created this. It's my fault. I did something. I deserve the punishment. I deserve this consequence following me the rest of my life. And God's like, no, son. Stretch out your hand. But God, I don't deserve forgiveness here. I don't deserve healing here. Like, I deserve your hand, your blessing on my church hand, not this one. And God's like, no. Stretch out your hand. That one. The one you're embarrassed by. The one you wish wasn't there. And the man stretches out his hand and is completely restored. And the religious people are looking at it and say, this is it. This is our moment. And Jesus is like, no. This isn't working. This was a word. The healing came as he heard the word of Jesus say, stretch out his hand, and he had faith to do what he had never been able to do before. Here's my hope. I hope you don't walk away from here today remembering my message, because it can't change anything. But here in a moment, I'm going to lead us in a prayer. And as we pray, my hope is that God opens up your ears and speaks to not just a situation, but a system. And I wonder if God's looking into your system and your situation, and he's saying, son, daughter, I need you to do what you didn't think you could do. You have a word of God saying you can do it. He can redeem it. He can restore. He can fix your finances. He can fix your marriage. He can come into that situation. You can forgive the person that did that to you. And because you have a word, God enables you to do what you didn't think was possible and what you couldn't do on your own. This isn't working. It's a word. So right now, with heads bowed and eyes closed, what's your situation? That keeps you up at night? That causes you to worry? That causes anxiety, depression? For some of you, even suicidal thoughts. God's saying, I want you to take out the hand that you wish wasn't there. In fact, right now, I hear God saying to some of you right now, you feel like you've been dealt a bad hand. And when you take a bad hand to God, don't fold. Because God can take a bad hand and do with it what he wants to, which is bring healing and restoration. And the place that you thought was completely hopeless becomes the very place that brings hope for the rest of your life. Because in the story you wish wasn't there, God showed up and brought healing. And that was the moment when God became real to you for the first time. What's your situation? What's your system? Holy Spirit, right now, I pray that you would open up ears to hear your voice. I pray right now that you would put the situation and the system that you want to change. God, I pray right now that you would put it on their hearts and on their minds. That they would know it's not just them thinking up this thought, but it's actually you speaking to them. And God, I pray that you would give them the faith to believe before what they'll only understand. So Holy Spirit, would you bring your grace to enable them to live where you've called them to live? I pray that you would rewrite the twisted places in our life. God, that instead of pessimism, we'd find hope, real hope, not a false hope, a real hope, because you're good and you work all things according to our good and your glorious riches. God, I pray that we would remove ourselves from the place of prejudice and we would have a witness mentality, expecting you to move on our behalf. I pray in the place where we've procrastinated, where you've already told us to do it, God, would you give us the courage to do it now, not wait until tomorrow, to do it now. And God, would you remove our pride that causes us to think that we could do it on our own, that we don't need your power here. But God, would we walk in the humility just to say, God, unless you move, God, it's just going to keep happening. God, would you speak to your people in Jesus' name? Hey, my name is Pastor Brandon, and I want to thank you for watching this last video. I hope you feel encouraged, inspired, and you grow in relationship with Jesus. And if you're in our area, we'd love to see you on Sunday. And if you're not in our area, I would encourage you to find a church near you, because to live that better story is to live it with Jesus together.